Hello everybody, I'm Don Kentz, and today we are here with Tim Smith. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. What about you, Don?
Doing good. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised here in Lincoln County. I've graduated Lincoln County High School, and then of course went off to college, came back, and I'm the pastor at the Cumberland Presbyterian Church here in Fayetteville.
Very good. Today we're here to talk about your experience climbing Mount Whitney.
Yeah.
Tell everybody about what is Mount Whitney and what led you to do it.
Okay, well, Mount Whitney is the highest mountain in the contiguous United States. So it's the highest outside of Alaska. It's 14,500 feet. And I had sort of set that as a goal I wanted to achieve. I don't know, I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I tried to think, how on earth did I ever get into hiking? Because I did not do that as a youngster. We just didn't do that in my family. But I tried to start getting in a little bit better shape. I went to see a cardiologist some years ago, and he put me on the treadmill up here at the hospital. And when I got through, I think I was 29 at the time, he told me I was in the worst physical shape anybody he'd ever seen my age. So I decided then that I probably needed to try to work out a little bit and try to get a little bit better. And in the process of that, somehow I started getting into hiking a little bit. And the first mountain I ever hiked was Wade Mountain, which is, of course, just a big hill as you go into Huntsville. And then I really thought I'd accomplished something when I went up Montesano. And then one of my friends, Ron Thomas, a lot of you may remember him from when we worked at the post office. Ron and me got into a deal where we decided we were going to climb Mount LeConte up in the Smokies. And everybody told us how hard that was, and we thought we would do it. And we went that day, and of course we didn't, I can't say Ron probably knew all about it, but I knew very little about it. I carried all the wrong stuff, all the wrong gear, wore the wrong clothes. It wound up being a smoky, foggy day. Got wet, got cold. Anyway, we made it to the top and back down, and there was something about a bug just kind of bit me then, and got where I went to the Smokies a lot. And then I decided that I wanted to try one of the big mountains out in Colorado, and that would be an incentive for me to try to get in a little bit better shape. And so I decided to climb Mount Elbert. It's the highest in the Rockies, highest in Colorado. And I had researched that if you have thyroid problems, high altitude can really affect you. And I had thyroid cancer back in 2008. And so the way to get me to do something is to tell me it can't be done. So I decided then I will train and I'll do that. And my wife and I went out there, and of course, she didn't do any of the climbing. But we went there to Leadville, Colorado, and I climbed it, and I thought it was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life, and I would never do it again. But then it wasn't but about a month later, I thought, I need to set some other goal, and I decided, well, I'll do Mount Whitney. And it's, Mount Whitney, of course, is in the Sierra Nevada in California. It's 22.5 miles round trip and 6,100 feet elevation gain. And it's in some really remote, of course pretty, but very remote country. So that's how we ended up going to California for this big adventure.
How'd you prepare for that?
Well, now that's a good question, Don, because it is a challenge, because as you go up in elevation, you've got less oxygen. When you get over 12,000 feet, your body will really start to notice it. So I was really at a disadvantage to train for that here. I go to the gym every day, run on the elliptical machine, and try to simulate, and thought maybe that would prepare me. And then back in March, we went to Gatlinburg, and I decided that I would simulate as best I could in the Smokies. And that was hard, because to get that elevation gain, I actually had to start my hike at the aquarium there in downtown Gatlinburg. Normally you would go up several miles into a trailhead. And I went that day about 19 miles, rained all day, then it sleeted, miserable weather, but once I accomplished it, I thought, well, if I can do this, then surely to goodness I can do that. And to get used to the distance, I went up to the University of the South. They have a lot of wonderful trails there, and just about every week I would add a mile. So I'd do 16, then the next week 17, next Saturday 18, and worked up until I got up to 22. And that did get a little boring going over the same stuff, but you know, it did. I was amazed. I really wasn't as sore when it was over as I had feared that I would be.
What kind of equipment and clothing and things would you have with you to take care of your trip?
Well, I had my day pack, because there are two ways you can do Mount Whitney. You can do Mount Whitney in one day, which is what I wanted to do. You can also do it in 2 days. You have to apply for a permit, and you have about a 30% chance of getting the permit. I was fortunate. The day I asked for my top pick, I got, and so I did mine in a day. Well, with doing that, I got to take a lighter pack than if I was going to stay overnight. But you're going to consume a lot of water, so I had to take a water filter to filter it. I had a hydration bladder. Then the clothing becomes an issue, because at that elevation you're going to be getting so much UV light. So this is a rated a 50 shirt. These pants are this way as well, and these were a late purchase because they were water resistant. And of course, Mount Whitney's in the desert. It's not really supposed to rain. But I debated about taking rain pants, and I thought, no, I'll take these. They're water resistant, and hey, it won't rain anyway. Well, of course it did. But I took a raincoat, and I also took another puffy coat if I had needed that, and waterproof gloves in case it did rain. And there were several people that were hiking that day that I overheard them saying they didn't take any of that gear. So when that thunderstorm came up later, I know they probably had a miserable experience. But I've learned the hard way a few times, you better off to take it and not need it than not to take it. And I think my pack weighed, when it was filled with water, about 19 pounds.
Wow. Well, tell us about, you started at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
Explain why you did that.
Okay. Well, I started at 2, which worked to my advantage for a couple of reasons, but they call that an alpine start, and the main reason for that is you want to get to the summit and off of it before the afternoon thunderstorms. Now that's a big issue in Colorado, not as big in California. And of course they've been in extreme drought. Well, I still wanted to start at 2, and it was also extremely hot. It was supposed to have been the hottest day in the history of California. It wound up not being that. I think the day before it was 112 there in Lone Pine, where we stayed in the hotel. When we left the hotel at 1:30 in the morning, it was still 91 degrees. So you want to try to, get ahead of some of the heat. So that's another reason to start that early. And I got started about 2:15. The sun started coming up, 5:30, and by 7 o'clock, it was getting pretty hot, because that sun, that's above the tree line. There's no shade, and then it's hitting off solid rock, bouncing back at you. So it gets pretty warm.
Talk about the rugged terrain.
It's very rocky. It is rocky, and of course, where I started out, there were snow melt coming down, making water. As you get further up, you get to a point where you're not going to be able to refill your water any further. So you've got to fill up there. And of course, water weighs about 2 pounds per quart. And I drink a lot. Part of that's I'm a big person, and part of it because I'm like a thirsty camel all the time. So I wanted to take plenty with me. And this became a concern too, because I also was taking a medication to help me adjust to the altitude. I got Dr. Hughes here to prescribe me some Diamox, and it treats a lot of things, but one of the things it does is to help you acclimate to that. It gets more oxygen in your blood. It doesn't make the hike necessarily any easier, but a lot of times you'll deal with altitude sickness. And I went and got it filled at the pharmacy here, and I asked the pharmacist, I said, how much do you think this will dehydrate me? And they said, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I told them, and the lady was real nice, but she said, let me get this straight. You're climbing the highest mountain in the country, in the desert, and you're going 12 miles without being able to get water, and you won't know if this is going to dehydrate you. And I said, yeah, that's true. But it worked out. That was one of the things, and of course, it's about an 11% grade going up. And as I got on up, I was thankful it clouded up some, and by clouding up, that helped some with the heat.
Well, let's talk about how long did it take you, and what kind of problems did you have?
Well, it took 16 hours, and the first problem I had was, I guess I wouldn't say a problem, but as I was going, I decided, as I'm kind of going, my air's doing pretty good, but when I started getting over 12,000, it really started to pull on me a little bit, which I had expected. It's hard to kind of know because you're not able to acclimate as well there because there's not other mountains nearby you can stay at or where you can kind of get used to the elevation. And then once I got to the top, I had probably gotten off the top maybe 100 yards, and it started thundering. And I had a lot of people talk to me here in the community about they didn't think I ought to do it, how dangerous it was. Some of them were, it's interesting, people's phobias. Some of it was the bears were going to get you. Some of it was they didn't like having to do so much of it in the dark. Some of it they didn't like that they were doing it by themselves. But none of them mentioned lightning. And that's the great danger when you're hiking, because especially there, you're the highest thing. I mean, it's just a bare-faced rock and you're there. And so I noticed I had a thunderstorm to the north. Well, fortunately it was moving north, and I got a little further. I probably got 2 miles down, and I noticed there was one coming from the south. It missed me too, but I wasn't as fortunate with the third one. It really came a heavy rain. We would call it a winter rain here, because just as I told you how hot it was, at that elevation, when it started raining, my thermometer showed it down to 48 degrees. It's about 30-mile-per-hour winds, and that rain's going sideways. So I got to check out and see if my rain gear really did work, and these pants lived up to it, and my Marmot coat lived up to it too. So, that $200 raincoat really did work. But other than that, it went fairly well. I will say that I didn't have any appetite at all. That's one thing elevation can affect you with, or altitude. I forced myself to eat some just to try to keep some energy, but that's about the only time in my life I've never wanted to eat.
What'd you have for food?
Well, I did a lot of research on. I wasted a lot of time researching, and in the end, I just went back with Cliff Bars.
Oh, okay. Was that filling?
Yeah, I thought it went pretty well, and I also took some Gatorade endurance packs and mixed with my water, because that's a good way to get calories in, and your salt, because you're sweating a tremendous amount, but to get some calories in by drinking them versus eating, and I think it really helped me.
On your video, I noticed you were filtering the water. When you think about mountain, you don't think about having to filter that water.
Some people don't filter it there. It's kind of 50-50, but I wanted to be on the safe side about it. I will tell a funny story, though, about while I was filtering it. I got up there, of course, the sun's only been up maybe an hour. There was a marmot that was there, and so I got my filter out, and in the process of getting all my gear out to get the stuff I needed, I set out some Cliff energy gels, and they were the kind that had caffeine in them, so they're supposed to hit you, and I knew it was going to be a long day. Well, when I got ready to put everything back together, I couldn't find them. And I realized that marmot had got them, and he was just sitting there grinning, eating on them, and so I'm sure he was caffeinated for sure after that.
Did you see many people along the trail?
I did. They let 80 people a day. They let 80 a day. 40 people like me have 24 hours to get it done, and 40 people they're going to hike up halfway, and so 20 are coming out and 20 are coming in each time. And so I did see some folks. I will say that when I signed the book that day, I think each page has about 48 names. I was the only one from Tennessee, of course, on there. And I think 47 out of the 50 names were from California. There was me, there was one from Montana, and one from Utah.
Wow. Well, tell me a little bit about, you said it took 16 hours. How did you feel after you got through?
Well, there's something about after you do that. I was excited, of course, and I was wound up, and so I felt pretty good. I thought the next day I would really hurt, and I did a little bit, mainly in my back. My knees, my legs, they didn't bother me too much, but my back a little bit. I don't know, probably maybe the way I carried my weight or something, but it wasn't too bad. We did go and visit some friends of ours outside of Los Angeles, and when I got ready to get up off their couch, I almost didn't make it up.
Did you see any other varmints?
No, that's all I saw. I think I saw a squirrel or a chipmunk and the marmot. There just wasn't anything else out there. A lot of times on the trails, I guess I make too much noise and just don't see that much wildlife.
Yeah. What's your next big thing?
Well, that's a good question. I had somebody ask me if I was going to do Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, and I said, no, I don't think so. There would be something cool about it, but the way they do it, you have to have Sherpas. It takes a week. You know, you're not carrying all
Sherpas?
Yeah, a Sherpa, that's the people like a porter that carries gear for you.
Oh.
So you stay at these places where you, like in huts, and you're not self-sufficient, and so that didn't interest me. My wife wants me to do something in Switzerland. That's just because she wants to go to Europe. But we'll see. I think there's a lot more out west I'd like to see and do. Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to tell us about the story?
Well, I do want to say one thing. I think some of the people here in Lincoln County appreciate this. When we pulled into Lone Pine, California, like I said, it's 112 degrees. That's about 50 miles from Death Valley. We pulled in, my wife said, I sure hope this hotel room is cool. And we went in the hotel there, and it was cold as ice, and it was one of the Amana motel units, just like they made down here in Fayetteville. So it was making it in the desert, 112, and it looked like it was a few days old, and it was making it.
Well, we appreciate you telling us the story. We're proud you made it.
Yeah.
It's got to be fulfilling. You got to be excited that you completed this on your list to do.
Yeah.
Tim Smith, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Don.
Appreciate you telling us the story.